Hello, everyone. It's been a couple of weeks, but here's a brand new episode of The Chris Show. Today's subject is anyone can be a mentalist. And before I get on the subject, like I promised, I'm wearing a black leather jacket, as I said I would for all my shows, to show my leather fetish and my solidarity with the fetish community, the leather community to be specific. A mentalist, somebody who can figure things out on their own without reading or listening to the radio or watching on television, just like Simon Baker's character on the television show. And if you don't know, Simon Baker is an Australian actor who does a very good American accent, just like Hugh Lowry, who's a Brit and does a convincing American accent. I'm going to start with an example. One of my favorite subjects, almost everyone loves sports. There's the term southpaw. A southpaw means somebody who's left-handed. Well, I figured out a few years ago how the term came into being and how it relates to baseball. I've been to almost every major league ballpark in California. The only one which I have not been to is the one up in San Francisco. And it dawned on me. Home plate, if you're the batter, you're facing the east. That's because if you're a batter and it's in the afternoon, you don't want to look into the sun. Just like when you're a little kid in school, you were taught the sun rises in the east and it sets in the west. But as you got older, you learned about astronomy, and that's not the case. But you get my point. It occurred to me a baseball diamond has the points of a compass, with first base being in the south. And when a pitcher's on the mound, his left arm is facing the south. And if he's left-handed, there you have it, southpaw. Continuing with sports, something I figured out. There's a brand new stadium up in Santa Clara where the San Francisco 49ers play their home games. It's called Levi's Stadium. It cost approximately a billion dollars. I'm bringing this up because a few days ago, something on YouTube I watched was about the 1966 San Diego Chargers season. And they were talking about what was then going to be a brand new stadium, San Diego Stadium, a cost of $27 million. Now, if you adjust that for inflation, $27 million in 1967, that would be liberally between $100 and $200 million in today's economy. So you ask, why so much to build a stadium? Well, you have the corporate namesake, Levi's. Have you ever noticed that almost all the stadiums in North America, the United States and Canada, they have corporate sponsors, corporate names. They want a piece of the pie. Then you have to figure you have the modern amenities such as Wi-Fi at the brand new stadium up in Santa Clara. Also, this new stadium, just like the one down in Arlington, Texas, the outside is glass, which is much more expensive than brick and mortar. And I'm going to compare the two stadiums in Arlington and Santa Clara. The hallways are wider, they're more luxurious, you have a better selection of food. The stadium in Arlington, Texas, it has an art gallery. The one in Santa Clara has a museum dedicated to 49er history. Then you have to figure in the labor costs. So there you have it, $1 billion. Talking about football, there's Peyton Manning. As you know, he is the spokesman for Papa John's Pizza. Well, I saw in my Yahoo newsletter the other day that he's very happy with the new marijuana laws because it's boosted his business in Colorado. Now, there's a no-brainer. Marijuana gives you the munchies. See, I figured this out on my own up here without reading it. Logical conclusions, hypotheses. And as long as we're on sports and television, I'm going to go to reality shows. I figured out a long time ago all of those reality shows are scripted. Case in point, Keeping Up with the Kardashians. Yes, I'll admit I have watched it on a few occasions. It's silly, so I don't watch it. But in one episode, they tried to paint Bruce Jenner as a brain-dead jock, not knowing about the Armenian genocide. Why, may I ask? Simple. Chloe did not want her husband Lamar to go play in Turkey. I mean, come on, Ryan Seacrest and the writers, stop insulting our intelligence. We all know about the Armenian genocide. Moving right along, I'm going to talk about television cartoons. Now that I'm older and I'm wiser, a lot of these cartoons, they have subliminal messages. The most recent example would be The Family Guy. Family Guy, excuse me. There was one where Stewie had a bad dream where he grows up to be a lonely virgin who lives a very modest existence working at a store like Walmart, and he has no friends. In short, he's a loser. Now, if you watch the show, you know Stewie, he's evil. He hurts people. He wants world domination. Comes from a past life, obviously. The point is, Seth MacFarlane, he shows karma, what can happen later in life due to bad behavior. Now I'm going to talk about some older cartoons. There was an episode of the Flintstones many years ago where Fred or the wrong prescription glasses, and he takes a little dragon and he puts the dragon in the arms of an ape at the zoo. And the thing is, the ape says, "Oh brother," and they put us in cages. You see what they mean? They show how crazy people can be. And this was the 60s, so it was a much more innocent time. Also in the 1950s, I do remember seeing, well, I wasn't alive in the 50s, but a cartoon from the 50s, Tom and Jerry, where they're warned about an experimental white mouse who can blow up an entire city if you kick it. And it turned out to be a hoax, not. So Jerry, I'm sorry, Tom, he kicks the mouse and a whole city explodes, and you hear the voice of the brilliant actor Paul Frees saying it's all a big hoax. You see Tom emerging from the rubble. Don't you believe it? So the point is, they have subliminal messages, and it was a very disturbing cartoon. You figure these things out as you get older, hence mentalist. I'm going to talk about the subject of food. We have an epidemic in this country of obesity and diabetes. Well, the other day, I ate some peanut butter and I noticed it's laced with sugar. And then I put some ketchup on a hot dog and I thought, well, God, no wonder there's an epidemic of obesity and diabetes. So much sugar in the food. It's awful. Mentalist. I'm going to talk about politics now. If you remember, there was an election in Scotland yesterday on whether or not to become independent or remain part of the UK. Well, I figured the Scottish people would come to their senses, the majority of them anyway, and remain in the UK. And the reason they stayed in the United Kingdom is due to economic reasons. England and Scotland and the United Kingdom as a whole is too interdependent. And within the European Union, they're interdependent on the rest of the countries. The issue is of special importance here in the United States because there are many Americans who trace their lineage to Scotland, yours truly included. I'm on my mother's side of the family. And the United Kingdom's largest trading partner outside of the European Union is the United States of America. That's another obvious reason. And I'm going to go on with the British economy, something else. They were one of the few countries not to go on the euro, and the reason is, I figured it out, is because Britain has many multinational corporations that do business around the world, especially in their former colonies. Examples would be the BBC, British Airways, which is the largest airline in the world, Virgin Airlines, and EMI Thorne, the entertainment conglomerate. So therefore, it would be easier to trade in pounds rather than in euros and keep a lot of British jobs and jobs over the countries intact. It would have been easier in converting to the euro. EMI Thorne recently was bought out by Sony, which is why if you buy a Beatle album or any that were formerly on Capitol, if you buy a CD, it'll be on Sony. And within the European Union, two other nations that did not go on the euro are Sweden and Denmark. That's because they've traded with each other for several decades, actually centuries before joining the European Union. And they trade with their Scandinavian neighbor Norway, which is also on the krone. And it would be therefore much easier for them to trade in that currency rather than go on the euro. Norway also, one of the reasons they did not join the European Union is because it has a very high standard of living, and with their oil revenue from the North Sea, they didn't want to share it. Not that they're selfish, but they didn't want to see all the revenue go to support the European Union. Very smart move on their part. Excuse me. And also there's a lot of timber industry and fishing industry. In Norway, it was designated by the United Nations several years ago as having the highest standard of living, the most livable place on earth. I'm bringing up these points because I figured these things out on my own. A few weeks ago, my mom was asking me about why Britain did not join the euro, and I'd explained to her for that reason right there. So the British, they're very smart. Those are some examples of how you can be a mentalist. You figure things out on your own, not necessarily by reading them, but when the thought comes in your mind, you can figure them out. That's my show for today. Hope you all have a great evening. Bye for now.